And incidentally, I am editing now the giant rubric. This is actually going to be helpful for other things, not in your world. A giant rubric for a comprehensive rating of different aspects of e-portfolio platforms. And the initial version of that, we can treat this, even though I won't put it up as a wiki, we can treat this as kind of a wikifiable document that it's a draft. And so if there are other features that turn out to be important, we'll add those to consideration. And the interesting thing is, we're going to fill it out, and that's going to be our rationale for choosing whatever platform we use, you know, because we have to kind of show our work to GA. But in addition, we're going to fill out the same rubric after we've used each platform for a semester to see if it actually lived up to the expectations in those areas.
So does this mean we have to each choose a different one?
Not necessarily, as long as we have a representation across a broad spectrum of platforms. And as is the case in the student world, if someone decides not to exercise a choice, in the words of the great Canadian band Rush, okay, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. The trees is the song. Off permanently.
So when should we make our decisions?
I indicated in a previous correspondence by the end of the semester. Okay, I put down May 5th. That's, you know, obviously you've got some wiggle room there, but just going in so that during the summer you can kind of work and bring yourself up to speed with that and all that.
I should have known you were a Rush fan and what was wrong with you.
If I can just say a word about that,
Yeah.
about making your decision. This committee on campus that's looking at the LMSs will, by the end of this month, make a recommendation to the provost. Now, whether or not the provost acts on that, I've been told that this will be the last decision he makes. And so, you know, but that was an early communication. I don't know if he's still holding to that, but if the recommendation is acted on, and if we find going into next year that we're going to be transitioning away from Blackboard, then maybe it's not worthwhile selecting Blackboard as your, although, you know, there'll be a 2-year transition period, you know, but it will be your call, but it's kind of a wild card in the process.
Yeah, good point.
Can I ask one last question? If we choose a platform, is there a charge to the students for using it?
No, one of the provisos I've made for all of the, well, obviously if it's an open source thing, you know, such as Google Sites or WordPress, you know, free for everyone, you know, as long as they get unlimited privileges to, you know, mine data from the users. But I've worked with all the commercial vendors. I said, we're not even going to talk to you unless this is absolutely cost and obligation free for everybody. And they said, no problem.
Okay. So when you use Blackboard portfolios in your course, you have to add a content area.
If you click the, sorry, the little button right there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, there we go. So you have to add a content area to your course, just like you would add anything else on the left-hand side of Blackboard for the portfolios. So it's just a content area like discussion boards or anything else. And so then on the end, what it ends up looking like, and you can see this, and your students can see this as well, because one of the things, actually let me back up for a minute, a little bit of context. This is from SSC 400, sorry, warnings for not my forte. But this is from SSC 400, which is the capstone course for the BLS Social Sciences Concentration Program. It's a relatively new program on campus. We've been running it for 2 years now?
2 years for social sciences, a decade for humanities.
The humanities end is very well settled. The social sciences end is still getting its feet. And so this is a capstone course for them. What our portfolios ask them to do, this is the greatest hits portfolio that we keep discussing. We ask them to collect at least 5 representative works of their best work during their time in the program. It's a degree completion program. They have to have at least 60 college or 60 credit hours when they come into the program, and sciences, so geography and communication, sociology and anthropology and psychology, and I'm leaving someone out. Geography. As opposed to the humanities end, which is much more literature and history focused. So they're asked to pick 5 representative works. They have to take classes from a distribution of disciplines. They pick a discipline to concentrate in, and then they pick 2 or 3 others to take some extra, not extra, but additional classes in as well. And so we say, please pick 5 or more best works from your time here at UNCG, and then reflect a little bit upon why these are your best works, and that's what their portfolio is. So some students are very strong students in the program, some students are less strong, just like the rest of our students. And so some of the portfolios look visually really amazing. Some, on the other hand, leave something to be desired, which I guess is one of the first things to know about the Blackboard tool, is that if you're a little bit tech savvy, you can make your portfolio fairly visually appealing. On the other hand, if you're one of those less tech savvy students that we have, it's very difficult to make it visually appealing, at least in my experience.
And really, to make your portfolio look interesting, item 4 on that handout there is the prompt, that instructs students to make it look more interesting by selecting background color, text color, things like that. And depending on additional skills they might have, they can make it really look snappy. Or it can end up looking like just you click on it and it's nothing but a set of texts.
So let me find those. Should be pretty.
Joyce, I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that part of your rubric or part of what you're looking for is for it to look snappy,
I
and you advertise that?
haven't been, I was just going to say, I haven't been in the past. I plan on emphasizing a little bit more in the fall after a couple of, I'm not teaching a class right now, but after 3 semesters of this class and having a better idea of how we're assessing what the students are doing and coming out of this, I plan on emphasizing it more.
Even after 10 years, we don't emphasize eye appeal in the humanities program, simply because what we've discovered with the Blackboard platform in general is that there are an awful lot of clicks and steps they have to go through to get to the end result.
Sure.
The very first thing they have to do is they have to request access to the content collection system in Blackboard. Now, finally, we've been able to do that in a blanket way for all students in a set of classes we offer each semester. But up until a couple of years ago, students had to individually contact Science Tech, and very frequently they weren't starting to work on this toward the end of the semester, and no one was answering the phone. And then, after that's in place, then there are, 2-3 pages of instructions that they have to follow pretty closely, and inevitably, even now, students are struggling at the end to get things together. And so the additional burden of, give us some eye appeal with what you're doing,
But on the other hand, with what we're doing with the portfolios, which is in part evaluating the SSC program, I plan on at least suggesting to students that if they have time to make their portfolios a little more visually appealing, they can. So that's the...
and one of the learning outcomes for the program is that they're demonstrating a facility for using and mastering online learning tools. And so, part of it is right there in the tool itself.
Yeah, I think, but despite the fact that these are all students, many of them are not at all tech savvy. In SSC 300, which is the gateway course into the program research methods, we're using Google Drive to turn in their papers, for example, in Blackboard, which is amazing once they get the hang of it. It's far better than turning in tools or turning in papers to the Blackboard assignment tool, because we're able to collaborate and we'll make comments and they're able to come back and revise, and it's wonderful. But getting them up over that initial hump of, I've never done this before, and some of them fly through it, and some of them take a little more handling.
Well, and what we've started to do in the humanities program, which has proven to be quite helpful, is that instead of just saving them for the capstone course, we actually introduce it right at the front end of the program in the introductory course. And so that seems to now have helped, as long as they can remember what they do 2 or 3 years later, when they're exiting the program.
There does seem to be a real question of particularly with the Blackboard interface. And I don't know how many studies have been done this, Lindsay, this might be in your territory. You know, if we're going to say, okay, give us a full-blown, nice-looking thing that's incorporated into the more or less the digital literacy types of skill sets, and that's part of your learning outcomes. I don't know to what extent doing that within the Blackboard platform would develop transferable skills in that area if it is just a matter of clicks. And am I correct in what I see here that basically what the students are doing in their end is they're simply creating a Blackboard site just like we would create a course site?
They are.
The similarities are there. Creating a course site is a lot more complicated, obviously, but the similarities are there. So this is what one of the better portfolios, at least when it came visually speaking, looked like for this particular class. This student figured out, and part of the problem too with Blackboard is you don't have a student view, as we all know. So sometimes it's very difficult when you're saying, hey, I'm doing this or I'm doing that, to know exactly what it is that they think they're doing, because sometimes, of course, they say they're doing one thing and they're not. With portfolios, it's a little bit better because you can obviously create your own portfolio. So if you wanted to create a portfolio, like an example one you show in class or something like that, you could do that. But it's still figuring out exactly what they're clicking on can be very difficult. But this student figured out how to embed documents, which is something that I do plan on recommending that they do for this fall because it makes it look a lot better. So she's got a preface. We asked them to write a short preface about this is what I included, and this is why, and this is how it shows my group. She's got a table of contents, and then her buttons are actually labeled. But you can still see here, she embedded her table of contents, she embedded her preface, but everything else, it's just popping up Word. And that's pretty common with Blackboard portfolios, is instead of embedding most of the documents, most students, they'll just have Word pop up with their document, which, it's not anything inherently wrong with that, but again, if you're looking at a portfolio as a finished product, it's fine from a grading end and not so fine from if you're going to show this to someone else or demonstrate it.
But they can't take this outside the university either, to show
They
their
can
work.
pull down their documents.
External group.
Yeah, they can pull down their documents, they can save their documents, they can save their preface, but the whole package itself is not going to export anywhere else as far as I know.
Right, it stays internally, which is good for us because then we can save it,
But for their career,
that.
Exactly.
it's not going anywhere.
So there's not a possibility for this to be later, they have this stuff. So it's not, okay.
They can
So it's
save
not
the
public.
documents.
Right.
So it's,
They can just save it, but they can't make it like a public
No.
site, like share the link or.
No, because you need to log into Blackboard, you need to be enrolled in the course.
They'd have to use a different platform, it's open source.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I
you're
mean,
using that like Google Sites.
technically, that gives somebody else access, but just so you know, just to get our colleagues at A&T enrolled in our Blackboard site took, the greatest act since the Ten Commandments coming down from heaven to accomplish. And this takes the highest level of administrative access that only the Blackboard administrator has, and it raises a question too, to what extent do we want to be offloading more and more stuff to people like our LMS administrator and IT people? Particularly if you've got these companies or open source places that have those sorts of resources.
But yes, Blackboard is a very closed system, and certainly legally on campus it is. And while getting students into the system requires all the six step, finally the students need to click a number of buttons to allow viewing and permission, that can be problematic as well. In
They have
fact,
to show the portfolio out to the class, and if they pick the wrong section by accident or something like that, then they're sworn up and down, oh, I shared it out. Well,
Yeah.
I can't see it, here's
So
the
they
screenshots.
share it with the rest of the class, right?
right.
But they have to actually share it out to the class, which is one of the first.
Okay, so let's.
Do they have a group creation where
Good, that's what I was saying.
can they have a group creation within this that it just automatic, because like in my online, they create groups and their groups can see it.
I don't know if you can share out just to a group room. You mean like a discussion board group? Like a Google Doc.
Yeah.
That, as far as I know, it's not that granular. These are very small classes, so they just share these out with each other class.
Well, we do that
Yes.
with the committee of faculty who assess these after the
But
students
for that,
graduate.
we
But
have to import them into another class.
we do, and then we have to sometimes request the Blackboard administrator to go in and, punch the permission buttons on individual portfolios so that they're visible to individual members on the committee. So there are a lot of things that are clumsy, absolutely.
If you're using Google Sites or something like that, you need to publish or link to it, and you're done.
I just said that's Blackboard for you.
Yeah.
Blackboard is
Yeah.
clumsy, everything's
Well, the other thing too-
embedded and hard to find.
I mean, the
Yeah.
other thing, picking up on some of the things that we heard in the e-portfolio presentation, and actually some things that started coming up in some of our discussions with our A&T colleagues, if you're doing some collaborative, not just looking at each other's e-portfolio work, but collaborative editing and things like that, or if you're doing even just pure evaluation, is there any way to have that data, gather that data, learn from it?
The extent of pure evaluation that occurs in these exercises is simply a prompt to the students in the class to review and comment on their peer portfolios. And so that ends up being part of the presentation. There's always a little comment link there.
Yeah. So there's a comment tool on the portfolios itself, but like everything else with Blackboard, it's clumsy is a good word for it. Excuse me. So what I ended up doing instead of asking them to make comments on the portfolios themselves, because then you have to look at each portfolio, look for each person's comments, and you can't comment on the comments. And I ended up just setting up a separate discussion board and saying, hey, please have your peer review over here. And that's actually worked out pretty well. So that's a clutch, but it works well, because otherwise, like I said, they're having to dig for each other's portfolios, looking for the comments, and it doesn't send any kind of notification or anything. Not that these guys do either, but this is why it's a lot easier to see everybody's evaluations. Excuse me, at one time. So that's what I did. I said, hey, over here, discussion board. And it's a very checkbox discussion board as long as they do it and make useful comments on each other. They get credit for it. But that was one of the visually better ones, which isn't saying a whole lot, but it's still.
Now, there are, I would say in the humanities program, they actually do some kind of visual collage projects. They do oral presentations and readings.
It works probably.
All of those things can be uploaded effectively into the portfolio.
Of course, with the SSC end, it's much more than just a collection of papers. I've had a couple students have to do speeches or videos in other classes, and they asked if they could include those, and I said by all means yes, but for the most part, it's just a collection of papers. So really, in a lot of ways, the Blackboard ePortfolio tool is the electronic version of the paper portfolio. Here's my stack of papers, knock yourself out. So this is what it looks like from in the end when we get the results. Then from the end of having to make them, I mean, you can see, first of all, that this is a 1, 2, 3-page handout on how to do it.
Can they upload any other format other than Word? So like I say, they want to upload like a PDF or a
Yeah,
publisher.
just upload the document.
Yeah.
But it's one of the strengths of it is whatever format their documents are in, they can upload them. But you just upload the document to your content collection. Well, no, they can upload anything they want, and whether the professor is going to be able to open it on their computer because they have the same program, that's another story, but they can upload any file they want
So
to.
we found it's impossible to upload any type of video file more than
Question.
Okay, yeah,
minutes.
that's,
Yeah.
that's not.
That it doesn't matter what you try, you have to link out to videos. Now,
Yes.
to be fair, in a lot of electronic portfolios, students may well choose to do that anyway, and quite frankly, in certain formats, for example, well, no, actually, in WordPress, you can embed videos so you at least get a preview. But the students would have to be linking out to to larger file sizes and basically a more complex codecs for, actually converting where it's usable by others.
Right.
But we've had huge problems.
Yeah.
Looking over at Jessica because we sweated through this so
But,
much.
and
This
Joyce,
is also, sorry, I was just gonna say, this is also speaking intensive class, and I have them uploaded audio files to Google Drive. We bypass Blackboard entirely because of those variations.
so that was my question, and none of them then put the speeches in the
They
football.
usually go with their papers. Like I said, I've had a couple of folks who said, hey, can I include my speech from this class, or I had to make a video for another class, can I include that? And the answer is absolutely, and they end up taking YouTube or Google Drive.
Yeah, just, they
It's
just
like-
like,
Now, bear in mind, and speaking as kind of representing the university attorney's office here, but one of the reasons a lot of campuses do an LMS to begin with is some degree of protection of privacy, of the contents of things for students, and not just general privacy protection. I mean, once something goes out open on the web, there are all sorts of strange things that can happen with people accessing information, personal information about students and all that. So one of the things you want to think about is, for example, like students just linking out to YouTube, even something as simple as that, you're going to need to take the extra step, and this doesn't just hold the Blackboard, you're going to need to take the extra step of cautioning students about the access level of those videos. Do you want to make it private? Do you want to make it unlisted? So there are three options, public, private, unlisted. So
We already have the waiver situation where we have to have students, for 105, we have to have students sign a release form to even put it on our third-party site, right? And so YouTube is out of the question for them.
we
But
use YouTube in my class.
Right.
but
they just,
private.
for the 105, because it's so massive, it's just, we've had some problems.
and we also use that as a data point for university-wide assessment of Gen Ed. And that is a specific area where that came up and the waivers were needed. So, even if you're not necessarily piloting this, of course, it is Gen Ed, these are issues to think about. Does the tool you choose have the capability of enabling students to control a level of access and to a level that would satisfy university needs to protect student privacy?
So real quick from an administrative standpoint, first of all, if you want to play with this yourself, again, don't forget that you're going to have your own content collection turned on, which you may or may not have turned on what else you've done with Blackboard. So you can put a request in the 6 tag for them to turn that on. And then once you have a content collection, you go in, this is what you see. First thing you have to do is upload files, so you can't upload straight. What? That's different. You can't upload straight to your content, or you're not uploading straight to the portfolio. What you're doing is uploading your files, and then you make a portfolio out of the stuff that you have uploaded. And I will not be uploading anything at the moment. So once you've uploaded your files, and it's just like uploading anything else to Blackboard, and uploads and then uploads and then uploads and then. Notice that I'm having to consult the instructions for doing this, which should have gone through what the process is.
So, I'm sorry, is this the student or is this the instructor?
The student and instructor version for this are very similar. This is
Okay.
actually one of the very few strengths here is that your view for making a portfolio is pretty much the same as making their view. It still doesn't help when they're squirming up and down that they're hitting the button and you're like, well, the only place where this is different is sharing it out, which is actually one of the places where I run into difficulty. We have a shell course for 400 because it was a contracted course, and so we had to write the course before we deploy it. And I had a student turn out who was actually sharing out showing out her portfolio with the shell course and not with her course. She was just clicking on the first SSC 400 that she saw. She was the first student to actually do that, so I didn't know that we couldn't even do that. So even though our views are the same, they still manage to find things that I can't see what to do.
I have a quick question. Do you have any distance learner people embedded into yours at all?
I'm trying to think. I do in high school. I don't think I do in college. Do I have college?
All of the students in the program are distance.
They are,
Yeah.
okay.
I thought you meant
What you're
somebody
seeing,
from-
actually, for those of you who
I
are
thought you
teaching
meant
fully
somebody from
online,
I'm sorry.
that's what they're dealing with in here. All of this is
Yeah, this is an
fully
all-online program.
Okay,
It's
the reason I ask is I taught online 105 before, And if they enroll as distance learner, you get another shell, and you have to.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I see, because there's
Make
the
the
D
combo.
section and there's the not D section.
Right.
Yeah, I always, we run it out of the combo course, and we avoid that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Okay.
I thought you meant natural or.
No, I'm
PCL.
sorry.
Some of my courses
But,
have had that too.
but
The
we
overall response was
combine it
satisfied.
when we're actually doing the work. It's, the registration is two
Mhm.
different,
Yeah.
but they combine
Oh,
the
okay.
two
So,
different,
yeah,
the
so
two
each of
sections.
them is the same assignment. Oh, yeah.
Yes, I don't go to two different sites for two different groups of students.
And that classification is primarily for.
Yeah, registration.
Yeah, then we end up combining two operating sections, so, yeah.
But again, there's another point of possible
This is
confusion for the
Right.
student,
Absolutely.
because now they have multiple
Yeah.
sites on their,
Yeah, and this
showing
is
up on
a
the
separate issue because like I said, it was contracted course, and we had a shell for the contracted course that they copy from our solicitor. And she managed to figure out how to serve that. Yes, ma'am.
Is this is maybe, I don't know if it's legal or not, but while they're here, this belongs to us, right? When they leave here, does this belong to the student?
Well, in our courses, we indicate right on the syllabus that they're going to, as part of the course requirements, be constructing a portfolio, and that we will retain that portfolio for assessment purposes, that it will have a life outside of the course. You know, it's a, we haven't sought advice from legal counsel on that, but that's how we operate. You know.
But doesn't, is it every, what, 2-3 years they go and delete courses from Blackboard?
Yeah, but
They archive.
They do, but
Every
we
archive.
This is
exactly, we
archived.
archive it, exactly. We have a separate portfolio class where we copy and move and then just continue to update the course. And it's archived, so we don't lose it.
But after a period, doesn't it Blackboard, after, just generally speaking, because if I go back 6-7 years, there's nothing there.
You can make exceptions. It's expect, can,
Yeah.
accept that.
They always send a notice out saying
Yeah,
that
right.
after X
Exactly.
amount of time, they're going to delete
Right.
stuff.
But we have the shell course for the courses evaluating. the program.
Although, and sitting here, I'm thinking, it's not so bad that things are deleted, I mean, I don't know if I want, portfolios that are 5 years still hanging around.
Right.
And stuff
But
like
if you
that.
start at a freshman year to their senior year, you're going to have to.
Well, yes.
Well, that's, again, all this is in the student's content collection, and so retaining it for 4 years with a student in it is not a problem. It's not attached to a specific class, it's attached to their content collection.
We have had a couple of interesting issues where students' computers have crashed, and they're in their last semester, and then they have to go back and contact instructors and get copies of earlier assignments. In fact, I was responding to a student a week ago with sending, using old files from classes.
But see, what they do is they send stuff to me through Word attachments because it's too complicated.
Right.
And ultimately, I start getting rid of stuff. Because it's
Well,
too much of my, not stuff in my.
That's right,
my
that's right.
files.
You have to rely on, your teachers and how long our teachers are going to maintain, assignment files for their classes.
Which is one of the advantages of using Google Drive, is that you can get in 300 and use Google Drive, and as long as they don't delete it, it sits there forever. So then I have students who are able to go back and they hit 400 and say, hey, you can record this from 300. Well, I know you have it. 300 is on that deleted because they're still on your Google account.
And to be fair, what we heard in the webinar, I know this is the case with education, it's probably the case with TestStream as well, that once student content is created there, it's housed there perpetually on their servers. So if the university server crashes or the students work, the student's own computer crashes or something like that, all of this is housed, as I say, in the cloud. So which, okay, technically not really a cloud, but it, it's available there. So that would be the case basically with any of these sorts of tools. WordPress, of course, and those sort of thing. Well, I don't know, with WordPress, you're actually uploading files from your computer that are then accessed through their server. So, yeah. Although I don't know, there's not a separate warehouse. Well, unless you create it, there's not a separate area to warehouse other stuff, right? Whereas in Google Drive, they can always put whatever they want there.
Well, and the other thing with Google Drive is if they share it with you, you can actually make a copy of it
Right.
So you can kind of freeze it in time. If they go in and change it later, you could, at the end of the semester, make a copy of it and save that in your own drive. And for assessment purposes, if they go in or they delete it or they change it, maybe they decide to use some of that information for another class and rewrite it or use it for whatever purposes, you could actually freeze it by just making a copy of that exact document.
You can, if you need to as well, always revert to a previous point of revision history as well. That's clunkier, so you do have a couple of different options there. Real quick, just because I do want folks to see how complicated this is from the student and things, so if you guys are evaluating this as a choice. I feel bad, I really shouldn't be saying that Blackboard so far. But as someone
Hey,
who's
that's what the discussion boards are for on all these platforms, that I beg you, I plead with you, okay, to participate in those discussion forums. Please, okay? Jenny gets a gold star, because she participated. And the reason I'm begging you is, gang, I mean, our feedback literally, I aggregated it directly to GA. I mean, it's your voice they're listening to in making these sorts of choices. I'm doing a preliminary report to Chapel Hill in May, right? And if you don't participate, then it's basically going to be, here's what Roy wants. Which, if I were a control freak, I can say, hey, that's great. But I mean, this is supposed to be the collective voice of, two universities.
So you have to click on portfolios, and then you have to click on my portfolios. And then, again, as I said, remember, I'm having to consult the instructions for stuff, because I'm a really tech-savvy person. You have to create basic portfolio. And you have to do the title and so forth.
What's the difference between, there are two portfolio choices. What's the difference between a personal portfolio and a basic portfolio?
I have no idea. When we first set up this class, I got a copy of the instructions that the humanities folks were giving out in their classes, and I just handed the same instructions to my students.
Let's try it the other way and see what happens.
Sure, we can totally do that. And then you can do a little bit with, again, messing around with the kinds of buttons in the background and stuff like that.
Now, that's the most fun of Blackboard. I love creating all these pop colors. I spent hours.
Yeah, I think
You can tell that one.
The only thing you can
I know, I'm having a good time with it.
Oh, yeah, there's a button library. I had no idea.
Yeah, that's how
Sometimes you read
that's what the navigation words look like.
So you fiddle around with your buttons, you fiddle around with your colors. I had no idea. And then you hit yes, that's available. You can save your comments, which is that comment feature we were talking about, and then hit submit. And then you have a portfolio, except it has no content. So then you have to go in. Let's see. You have to go back to my portfolios, and then there's supposed to be add content button. I'm sorry, my portfolios. Oh, sorry. And then you click on the down arrow, and then you click on build. Click. It's Blackboard. I wish we were using Google, but that's a different conversation. So, you have content. I do this. And then, don't forget you've already uploaded all your stuff, which we didn't actually do, but you've already uploaded all your stuff to your content collection. And then you browse in your content collection and find it. And hey, now your portfolio is one thing. And if there was the option for embedding the document, I totally missed it, which explains how our students see so often. So that's it. It's a lot of clicks. You upload all your stuff to your content collection, and then you build the portfolio, and then you add the content to it. So it's a very multi-step process. But that's what your students would be looking at having to do if they were using a lot of Black portfolios and going through this process.
And this might be a question for Bob, I'm not sure, but let's say that the committee chooses the Canvas LMS in the next month. Is there any way, and I know we will not be implementing that for 2 years, but is there any way that we could get access to Canvas for our courses so that we could try it out? Try the e-portfolio out?
It's my understanding that if there were different LMS and the provost would have been starting in the fall, both Blackboard and the new system would be in place and operating, and there would be a 2-year transition period.
Got it.
So yes,
Okay.
you could start to do that in
Okay.
So we'd have the
the
option
fall,
for opt-in.
right? Yeah.
They are.
Would students still use Blackboard and
We,
shadows?
well, exactly. We would expect a 2-year period where both systems are being supported and operating as we're transitioning from Blackboard to the next. This, on other campuses that have made this change, that's traditionally what happens.
So there is, however,
Yeah.
there is one advantage to Blackboard, which for all of my, I'm not crazy about Blackboard, it's a lot of clicks, it's clunky, it's kind of ugly, students have trouble with it. There is one big advantage, especially from an administrative standpoint, which is the plugging the portfolios value.
Right, yeah.
Which we kind of touched on, but I don't think you said explicitly. If you're in a program that's having to say undergo a lot of outside evaluation because it's really been working on campus, Blackboard portfolios are easy to archive. So as we said, they can just sort of into another course, a shell course, or you can just add observers to your current course either way, and then they can view the portfolios. But we can also sort them into a shell course and archive them, add in an item. So that is one advantage of Blackboard. You have to be in that unique position of you're being evaluated every semester.
Well, you actually will have that, because that's actually, I was just going to email you this morning about that too. That's how we're going to access a few of the samples and portfolios to start experimenting with it anyway.
So for grading purposes, do you grade the same way in Blackboard through the Grade Center and then they put that into their content collection portfolio area? Or is it connected?
I'm not sure.
You
I'm
know,
not sure what you're asking.
so in Blackboard, you can grade in Blackboard and put grades in the Grade Center, but for the e-portfolio, is that connected?
You see what I'm saying? Put it into their content collection. What do you mean?
Is it two separate systems? Or are they, so if, for instance, like on some systems for e-portfolios, you can grade and it's going to go straight to the Grade Center, and then you can make it, you can tell the student that they can then make it live in whatever way that live means on that platform.
No, they make it live first, they share it out with the entire class, and then I go and view it. Again, this is very much the electronic equivalent of here's a pile of paper. So they have to make it live, they share it out with everybody in the class, and then I go and review it, and then I have to go put the grade column into the Blackboard grade
So it
book.
doesn't
Well,
populate
Share-
on
I
that.
mean, I would say everything in the portfolio, with the exception, at least in the humanities program, of the final paper has already been graded.
Yeah, remember, this is a grade sets portfolio.
Our prompts to students are submit a clean copy, not a, and you have the opportunity to correct the papers. You have an opportunity to do a final rewrite on the papers, but don't submit a paper that's been graded and it's marked up by the instructor and pop that in your portfolio unless you're going to, juxtapose it with a clean copy that
Right.
you'd be ready to show progress, But the connection between the grading center and submitting assignments there.
So it's totally standalone, you
Yeah.
don't get to see.
Well, I don't know, we've never used it that way in the humanities program. I don't know if the capability is there or not.
But since this is grade sets portfolio, there's not that sort of submit, revise
Yeah.
slash. It's just, here's my best work, go ahead. And there is a little bit of a revision process because it's also a WI class. So they have to turn in a rough draft of their item selection and, excuse me, their preface. And so I grade the preface, I grade the item selection, I say, oh, hey, you included 2 works from the same class, we asked you not to do that sort of thing. And then they turn in the whole thing and just create another column in the Blackboard grade book, and any comments that they get just go into the comments field on that grade.
If you're doing a face-to-face or a blended course though, and you can take a course period and introduce the students to the tool and walk them through the handout, that chances are you're not going to have too many problems, even though there are a lot of clicks, and at least they'll have that experience of seeing how it's done.
Yeah, but no, there's no, it's totally set in or not dead or anything like that. So if you're doing that sort of portfolio, where you need to be able to provide in-progress grades on the portfolio and then have them come back and do some more stuff and that kind of thing, then this would be very clunky for that. Because
Well,
it is
not necessarily in
separate.
progress, I think more, I mean, first year students, I mean, they're gonna have a ton of grammatical errors and just all kinds of, or other issues with their paper. I mean, typically, I mean, the grades you get is the grades you get, but I would want them to post that on their portfolio. I would need for them to fix it. Even if in the typical class, the grade they get is what they get, but before they post that on their portfolio, I think.
And so it sounds like we're doing much the same things, we're asking them to provide a clean copy and all that. It's
Yes.
just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
As far as their portfolio, if they're sending in their best work, which has been revised, graded, what are you grading on?
So as I said, we have them turn in a preface where they discuss these are the best works, and this is, this is why I think these are my best works, this is what I've learned from it. So frankly, typically with a preface, most of what they're losing points on is when they don't answer questions. A lot of them have real trouble with the reflection part of this, and we've talked about this a little bit in some other meetings, but especially with these students in the social sciences concentration, because I've spent the better part of a couple of years fussing at them to be objective social scientists, to leave their personal opinions out of things, to leave their personal feelings out of things, and then they turn around in this assignment, and we're asking them to be very personal and very reflexive, and that's a very jarring transition. So again, having done this for a couple semesters now, and having had a semester off, I've had some time to consider what do I need to do better in the fall and stuff. And one of the things is warming up to this assignment and saying, hey, we're going to ask you to do some personal reflection on how you've learned, and this is going to be very different than the kind of assignment that we normally have in here. So for the preface, they're being graded on basically, did they answer all the questions? Is it grammatically correct? Because that is a fresh paper. At the end of their college careers, some of them are stronger writers than others, even in an online degree program. But I'll be honest, it's a very pro forma grade. Even with the preface, as long as they pick 5 items and they've answered all the questions, I grade the grammar and ask them to reflect a little bit more. But other than that, it's a very pro forma grade. And then for the portfolio itself, the way I've handled the class again, because it's a capstone class, this is their last class, they're all hopefully graduating. It's a very pro forma grade. Did they turn everything in? Did they have 5 papers? Did they go? Actually, the peer review is a separate grade altogether. Did they turn in the finished product that's usable? And if they did, they get full credit.
Is there a question in there that says, what does your degree mean?
We can actually look.
I'm just curious because this is
a very different. So, this is how I teach. I'm very regimented. They have their assignments from the very beginning, especially because it's contracted class and it's the same content every semester. They can look at this from the very beginning of the semester, and they are encouraged to say, look ahead and see what's coming. So they can see the assignment, they can see the rough draft assignment, they can see the final assignment, they can see the graded rubrics. And so they're asked to select items, again, select their 5 more best works, and then answer what area they're concentrating, what their area of concentration was, a general overview of what they've learned, how are the social sciences disciplines connected.
In fact, these are prompts that go directly to the SLOs for the program, so that we're...
Program with a microscope on it, so we're having to be very specific about the intention.
And that's actually something very important, whatever you're going to ask them to be doing, either in the e-portfolio generally or within the contents of the e-portfolio. And we're going to have peer examination, we're going to be sharing all of the syllabi and everything over the summer of your courses as you develop them, so we can not only look over our own shoulders, but check on each other to make sure that those SLOs for your course are tied into what you're actually asking them to do in the portfolios. And that also hopefully will generate greater student buy-in, because what they're doing in the e-portfolio, however you decide to realize that, is incorporated into the whole philosophy of the course rather than just being something you tack on as an added thing. And of course, the bigger issue that Brady was touching on there too, what's the relationship between your holistic assessment of the e-portfolio and your assessment of the contents of the e-portfolio?
And then to answer your last question, they are asked at the end, basically, what is this degree going to do for you? What does it mean for you? however they choose to answer that question. Some of them are very career focused, some of them are very personal focused, because everybody has different goals going to community firm, as you all know, because you deal with the same body of students kind of in the middle. So
What I've found over the years with working with the assessment committees that are working with the portfolios is that they take a very global view of portfolios. They look at for evidence like the big things as opposed to regrading or commenting on assignments. Sometimes that does occur, and it creates very interesting discussions. In one instance, it led to the discovery of a whole body of plagiarism, that had escaped first-line instructors, and so the student that is in a situation of double jeopardy, in fact, we kind of set that one aside because it's just too complicated.
Papers?
Yeah.
Okay,
just
because if
too
they
complicated.
buy their papers from a good paper mill, it's, as you guys know, it's very difficult to catch the plagiarism the first time around. And if they just grab something off Wikipedia, that's easy to collect, but everybody's
Well,
had that
and an
experience.
instructor turning a lot of papers around, it's easy versus a 2 or 3 member team kind of doing some sampling, and all of a sudden they bring a different set of eyes and familiarity with them.
I think in this particular case, what they noticed was that the style of papers didn't seem to match. So because remember, they're including papers from multiple classes. So I get their paper in my class as long as they're being consistent about the voice, whoever's writing the papers, as long as they're being consistent. In my class, I'm not going to notice. But then if you stick it all together, but again, when you're writing a portfolio, it's easy to say, well, their voice changed over time, and their style changed over time, they were different classes. And finally, we've all had the experience where, we've read a paper and we're like, we know this doesn't sound quite right, but we can't figure out where it came from. And I hate to say that, but it's just all by way of saying that I still feel really bad that I didn't catch that when I was grading the portfolio. But you were asking about grading. This is the grading rubric for the final. And so that you can see we're really just saying, did you include all the papers that you said you would? Did you provide thoughtful answers to all the questions? Did you demonstrate some critical thinking? Did you not include anything that was relevant to the assignment? It's a capstone course, like I said, at the end of their careers. And so this assignment in particular is very, I don't want to say pro forma, the assignment's important, the grading is pro forma. We have like 5 minutes. Does anyone else have any questions about the nuts and bolts of Blackboard portfolios?
How do your students, well, not nuts and bolts, but how do the students react to it?
Honestly, they say, what do I need to do? Again, these are seniors, these are folks who've had a very long college journey for the most part. They're just like, by the time they hit this class, tell me what to do so I can get it done.
You have a lot of non-traditional students.
They're all non-trans.
I would say while there is that sense of belief that permeates the portfolios, there's also, I would say a substantial body in both programs where they just radiate pride in what they've accomplished. And that's when, for the reviewers, that's when reading the preface and seeing the kind of connections and learning and the themes they're teasing out, is really very heartening.
Yeah, I thought she was asking how did they react to the Blackboard portfolio tool itself.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely.
And the answer is, you just tell me what to do to get it done.
With
How do they react?
frustration.
Right.
Yeah,
The
how do they react
last
to portfolios? They actually, after the initial hump of, I don't want to look at my old work, they are generally very pleased with what they're doing. And I go, hey, I've actually gotten a lot of stuff done. This is pretty helpful.
So is there,
It's okay. I was just going to ask if any of them have a desire to share it with other people. So
No one in my class has
Okay.
I would say that I'm always surprised. End of the semester, during finals week, there's a window where they're asked to comment on at least 4 of their classmates' portfolios, and usually it's a very robust discussion. There's a lot of congratulatory remarks, but there's also discoveries that people are making because it's in the portfolio. They at other points in the semester, they're not looking at each other's papers. And here they're reading their final, everyone's final papers, they're seeing their glossaries, some of their other assignments. And, I'd have found it helpful because it kind of reaffirms evaluation and there's learning going on in inspecting other people's work. They're making those comparisons and value judgments.
And again, maybe I misunderstood the question. I thought you meant sharing.
I actually meant both So that's going on at both, like sharing with peers
Inside
and
the
then
class,
also
they do enjoy
beyond.
sharing with each other, because these guys are very much a cohort.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they're not all in the same classes all the time, but they're in many of the same classes with each other. And again, it's all online. They have the option of taking face-to-face classes if they want to, but most of the students on first are the online, because they're all over the place. And so they've been saying each other's names for literally years in some cases. So they do enjoy sharing with each other, I think, outside the university.
Yeah.
And I haven't had anyone inquire about, hey, can I take this and show my employer or whatever? Because most of them are already working, they're already demonstrating this research.
True.
It's just a very different batch of students from a lot of them.
So do you share these instructions with the students of how to build it, or do you, or?
Yes, they know the instructions the students
They know
get.
the instructions.
I've
There's
not
not a lot.
already logged out, so I can't show you.
No, you're fine. I was curious, because just from some of the, like, conferences and workshops I've been to about e-portfolios, a lot of times, on a lot of these campuses that have rolled out e-portfolio systems, they don't spend a lot of time teaching the students how to use the system, because it's supposed to be very intuitive. It's supposed to be very easy to use. So a lot, I mean, I've asked this question a lot, and I'm like, you know, the students sort of pick it up on their own without having to have step-by-step instruction, or having to have a workshop for somebody to come in. I mean, we have to have a workshop for our instructors to use Blackboard, so for students, I know, although they don't come to the Blackboard workshops, they need it, so just curious.
These are the instructions they get, and most of them are able to pick it up by following through the instructions, even though it takes them a little while. But there's always one or two students that I have to have fairly long conversations with, like here, do this.
Many of them have
It's
used
an
Blackboard
in-person
for
class,
2
we
years,
did.
so they're, you know, they pick it up.
Yeah, and there's another thing going on too with that student cohort. I mean, you're, particularly with non-trads, what you're talking about, these are people, I mean, look at what they've gone through to get their college degree, right? They've persevered through a lot of things. So that for lack of a better term, that perseverance to work through challenges is already pretty much there in that group. And one of the things that is a big issue, particularly with the very young students,
What about
you get them pretty much as soon as they walk on campus, is they may not yet have that degree.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean,
But
they might not have had to function in that
Turn
type
on
of environment where they can be
computer.
highly self-sufficient, resourceful.
Right.
And so that is something to think about. And I'll mention that our education folks, you know, emphasized in their last webinar that, oh, you know, students apparently just breeze through this. We haven't had any concerns and all of that. And, you know, I mean, obviously everybody's going to say that, but they indicated that they're, and I haven't heard even, you know, particularly from campuses that have experimented with it, the students have had big issues.
Call somebody and ask.
Well, actually, we're going to get other perspectives because after we hear the next webinar and last webinar from TaskStream, you know, we use TaskStream on all education schools in the state use TaskStream for e-portfolios.
My sister had to use the touchscreen program and she was not
Yeah.
super happy.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in, instead of the TaskStream rep, I'm going to pull in our TaskStream person in the School of Ed who has to deal on the front lines with, you know, helping faculty and students, and we're going to get the perspective from the trenches. And we're going to get the same thing from, I mean, we can scare up somebody with education, the same sort of thing there. And we do have some folks who are using some of these other tools. For example, you and Amy Strickland have been using WordPress for some of your things, and can kind of tell us some of your experiences with that. We'll go over WordPress. Thanks. Very